Mall of America. For more than 30 years, it has been a retail leader and an international destination, and it remains the largest mall in the U.S. Not to mention, it welcomes millions of guests from around the world. It's huge, but it's also so much more. In this podcast, you're going to hear the real stories of how it started and why it continues to thrive. You'll hear about challenges we faced along the way and what you can learn from them. We will feature guests and experts from all walks of life and business, and along the way, you'll laugh, learn, and maybe even change the way you look at things. So if you're a fan of the mall, a brand new visitor, an entrepreneur, or a dreamer, prepare to dive deep into so much more. This podcast is presented by the Bloomington Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Hey everybody, I'm Jill and I'm your host for today's episode of So Much More. We are talking all about food. So who doesn't love a good meal, a new restaurant, new foods, and just bringing people together and having fun community? So joining me today is our very own Carrie Charleston, who has served many restaurant deals here at Mall of America. And also joining us is Minneapolis foodie Steph March. Stephanie is the executive editor of new media and food at Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is going to be fun, talking about food and restaurants. And let's just start there. Food is such a connector. Being able to sit around the table, enjoying cooking together, going to a great restaurant. And we love to travel. We love to try different cuisines and to taste all the wonderful things that that is out there to try out. So what is it about food that brings us all together?
I think it's the, we often say that people come together around the table. And I think there's something to say about that in terms of like you eat every day. You know, every single day there's an opportunity to share a moment with somebody else. And if you're not sharing a moment with someone else, you can then share a memory about a moment with someone else if they weren't with you. And I like to think about it like pizza, right? I mean, like, have you ever met a person who's like, no, I just don't like pizza? There's like, it doesn't exist.
No,
like, and if you do,
it's like, what?
Yeah. And that's because you can get it. I mean, there's so many different ways of enjoying that one dish. Like it can be in your college dorm, at 2 a.m. And it can be, with like a late night when you're having, like you're up late eating it out of the fridge because you're nursing your baby. Or it can be where you're sitting down in Italy and you've pulled this thing out of the wood-fired oven and it's still all pizza, right? So those experiences, I think, sort of enrich us as humans. And then we get to like connect with other humans about their pizza. And it just, all of a sudden, it's a door that opens. And then all of a sudden you could be a billionaire and I could be, a golf pro, or I could be the guy who's like mowing the greens. And then it's the same moment. Mm-hmm. And like we can all do that together, I think.
Love it. So what's your pizza?
My pizza. I grew up with a mom and dad that loved going out to eat. And our family experiences were 2-3 hours long. And all of our friends would come over and they'd be like, really? Like, what do you guys do for so long? And we just talk. We talk and tell stories and laugh and cry. And that was our community. And it was great for me because even like going into college with that whole experience, they just gathered all my friends from college and we did the same thing. And it's just such a fun sharing experience, no matter if you're in college or a kid or, to your point, eating pizza or whatever it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just great conversation and getting to know people and love. It's great.
It is.
Absolutely.
True.
It gives us a chance to pause during the day and really have that time to reflect and to connect with our loved ones and with strangers too. Yeah, it's just a way to really come together.
I think the best is the stranger part because you can meet someone bellied up to a bar somewhere, you don't know anybody, anything, and all of a sudden you have these great conversations. It just leads into so much more.
It does.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So Stephanie, as we were doing some research for this podcast, looking at your LinkedIn profile, you described yourself as spending the last bunch of years of your life eating, drinking, talking, and writing. Not a bad gig. And I would agree, that is not a bad gig.
Right,
so how did you fall in love with food and how did you bring that to be your career?
Well, I think, what's funny is when I look back, I think about my mom was I was a latchkey kid. She was a single mom and she was going back to school at nights. And so, we kind of had to fend for ourselves, and it was like where I just had to learn, how to make pasta, which is like still, yes, I threw noodles on the wall to make sure that they were done. Right. But then I got into that's a little bit, I didn't have like the classic, I had the Nona who who taught me. No, I just figured it out, right? But then I, right after college, I kind of started in advertising. Like that was where I got into an agency, and the woman who mentored me there, Marcy Little, she taught me that you can pretty much get anybody to your side of things if you can cook them a good plate of food. She taught me how to make spinach artichoke heart dip, and I was like, my God, this is amazing. And I made it for like so many dates and so many in my 20s and all this stuff. And so food has sort of like quietly woven its way through my life. And then I think what happened was as in advertising, what happens is, of course, you get the last one hired is the first one fired. And so I actually was let go and I had to go find a job. So I was bartending again, as I had done in college. And I happened to land at Buca de Beppo. And so from there, it was growing, and it was just like we all recognized that it was like a fun place to be, and it was a unique moment. And I kind of jumped on board with the team, and I began opening restaurants. I eventually became the director of training for Buca, and I opened about 30 to 40 restaurants across the country. And so I really got into restaurants and that whole side of it. And then I moved into the ocean air and opened all of those restaurants. And then I was consulting on restaurants and all sorts of things about helping people do strategic planning and everything else. Well, all of that kind of bubbled up in that learning to shave on someone else's face, as we like to say, like I was getting my sort of restaurant PhD. And then in 2008, everything kind of stopped. And so I said, well, I'm going to move now back to my English major if I can and start doing some writing. And so it was also the sort of the resurgence of blogs, and everything was kind of happening at the same time. And I ended up getting in with Mpls magazine to be just a blogger to start. And then I guess the rest is history. That was 15 years ago. And I'm, like kind of the executive editor of New Media and Food. So
well, congratulations on your career path. And everything happens for a reason,
it
right?
really does. Yeah.
And it sounds like there's a common thread of Italian food in your past.
Weirdly, but like not even, I would say that it's funny that may have been in the grounding for sure. And I have now since moved like much of the rest of, the world in the country. I've moved more towards Asian cuisines.
Okay.
Like I'm a Japanese sushi, ramen, dumpling girl for sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is great. We're going to get into your recommendations here shortly. So Carrie, you two have known each other for a while. I think just being in the industry, having, common paths. So talk a little bit about how you guys connected and just where you found your love for food too, because you are our resident expert that we look to for recommendations all the time.
She's your text. Like you're like, hey, Carrie, I need to know where am I going to go?
All the time. All the time.
So, and I love hearing that story because that's a great segue into how we met. It was about 20 years ago, and I was working for a boutique real estate firm that specialized in restaurants. And I happened to meet Steph at the time and her husband, and they were looking to open up their own restaurant with all of this incredible history that she was just referring to. You were doing Ocean Air at the time, I think.
Yeah.
And so she was traveling around and opening all these restaurants. They wanted to open up their own, and that little wheelhouse, it's so much fun, for one, because you meet people like Steph and her husband, and they want to open up their own place, which is a dream, right? So you go in a car and you drive around and you start looking at properties and you get to know each other pretty well because you have spent so much time in the car together. And you can imagine how much fun she was in the car for hours and days at a time. And then it's also like a big secret.
Yeah.
It's a huge secret because you're driving around town. They don't want to be recognized or have anyone know that they're looking. Right? So you're 6 a.m, you might be walking through a restaurant space, looking at it like, is this it? Is this it? Whatever. So that was the beginning of our relationship. And then over the years, it's just grown. And I remember, what was the name of the blog that you first started? It was before Mpls magazine. You were writing online for them. And I can't remember the name of it.
I was writing for The Rake.
That was it.
It was The Rake was a publication, like a weekly, like monthly, actually, is what it was.
Okay, so I remember when you first started doing that. And so I've watched Steph grow until where she is today. So it's really a really fun journey. And our love of food, growing up to that story I was saying about my parents, that was a big part of our life growing up, whether it was going out or having people up to the cabin and spending the weekends all around food. It was always about food.
Yeah.
Always. And so that's always been intertwined in my life. And then when I found out I can actually make money in real estate, finding restaurant space. I mean, that was like a dream come true. I didn't even know it existed, that was a profession. And so that's how I started with all of this. And then it just grew even more because you're working with people that are building their dreams.
Yeah.
And then it could be a big franchise that has a local operator. So it can be mom and pop, it can be national, it can be regional, whatever it is, but it's always the same dream. So that's where my passion really came from.
Yeah, and you can, I mean, and I will say this, like that is something that as I've known commercial real estate people across time and whatever, but like you guys really held that dream and you really kind of helped nurture it. And it was a very soft relationship that was so special. And I think that with restaurants, it is such a personal thing. I'm not opening a dry cleaning store. I'm not opening like a video rental store. You're opening something that is an expression of the self.
Yes.
And so it's terrifying. It's vulnerable. And I think that that's the deal where there's this sort of partnership that has to go forward when you're opening a restaurant and anybody involved in it. And you have to kind of all look at each other in the eyes and say, okay, this could go or this could not go. And this could mean a lot or it could mean, not. But it's a special moment, I think.
It definitely is. And when it comes together, there's no other feeling like it.
Yeah.
For both.
Yeah.
For both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super fun.
So when you are going into restaurants, dining experiences, those locations, how are you evaluating and reviewing those spaces? Because it's not just about the food, that's a huge component, but the environment, the atmosphere, the service.
Yeah.
So talk about that process when you are looking at that, because then I do want to know who's doing it well in this marketplace. We are known, Minneapolis-St. Paul is known for the culinary scene. We have great restaurants and dining establishments. So talk about that.
It's interesting because I do believe it is the full package. It is no longer just like this one chef and is making these types of dishes. These days it's because the restaurants have evolved into sort of being these, I hate to say entertainment because I don't think that that's necessarily it, but they've become these third spaces for people where there's work, there's home, and then there's these other places where they feel like they can sort of find their people and relax. And it's a little bit more than just like I'm eating this, this pork chop. But I do think that it's also really tough to handle that and to kind of nail that. I won't say the name of the place, but I remember when the chef was walking me through this, this vanilla shell of a restaurant, trying to tell me what he was excited for. And he was describing this place, as this really energetic and fun and youthful and everything else. And then when they opened it, it was not that. And I was like, oh my God. I walked in and I had not seen it since it was at Vanilla Shell. And I was like, oh, so did you guys change your mind? And he was like, no. I was like, oh my God.
The vision's a little
This
different
is-
from
it
what
is.
you had pictured.
And I will say that restaurant is now closed. But, it's because it is hard to achieve and it's hard. It's the story of the restaurant has to be authentic. And then the feeling of the restaurant has to be authentic. It has to come from somewhere personal. I mean, of course, there's places that have survived and thrived, on a cookie cutter and a chain or a collection of restaurants. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the intent itself has to be personal. And the people in the space have to believe what they're doing and believe in what they're doing in order for it to really be something special. And I'll just give you the example of Porzana, which is in the North Loop, and it's at Danny Del Prado. And you think about this. He took over the space that was the Bachelor Farmer, obviously, which had its own vibe and its own character. And it lasted for many years up until the pandemic as a sort of a standard bearer, right? And then you get this new guy coming in, from, doing an Argentinian steakhouse. And we're all like, well, we'll see. I guess, I don't know. But it breathes Danny Del Prado. It breathes in and out the experience.
Beautiful. It's
and
incredible.
it's so many things that are it's intricate and it's layered, but it's warm and it's just kind of fun. It to me is like probably one of the best spots to really
Very well done.
feel the full package, the drinks, the atmosphere, the people, the food, all of it.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Carrie, how about you?
I 100% agree with everything you're saying. And I feel like that connection when it comes together, the energy from the person who's, looking at the space or whatever, the energy, the bones of the building, the infrastructure, all of that just can come together so perfectly. But to Steph's point, it has to become so well done. And Porzana is a great example of being very well done to that point of the energy of the space and the integrity that was kept within the space.
Mm-hmm.
But it's breathing new life into it and a
Yeah.
complete new energy.
Totally.
So it's a great transformation from that standpoint. So I love that. And that is one of my new favorites too.
Good.
I love it. So you used a word, and I'm going to steal it from you, eatertainment. So we're going to now add that to our list.
Yes.
Because we look at ourselves as retailtainment.
Yeah,
And dining
totally.
has always fell into the entertainment side of that, but it really stands on a class of its own. Really important for us here at Mall of America because we want to make sure we differentiate the online experience to the in-person, the brick and mortar experience. And we have a lot of great restaurants here. Carrie's done an amazing job with the team on creating a great experience and offering because we have the themed restaurants, we have family friendly, we have higher end, we have the restaurants that are within our hotel establishments. So talk to me about your thoughts about what you guys love about dining at Mall of America. What are some of your favorites? And then also what we might want to add to the mix as we look
Ooh.
forward.
Okay, well, I know that I have kind of a standard. I mean, I don't know if that's surprising or not, but I usually, if I'm shopping and I'm doing stuff, and I'm going to hit up Masu and I used to have a friend who bartended there named John. And if he was there, I was like, ooh, I get to go and like hang out, But I just love that they're local, but they really have a sense of how to handle this size of a place, because I think you have to be able to handle crowds. It's like the State Fair, right? In that way that I want to trust you and I know you're good, but I also want to trust you to be able to do the job in the space you're in. And they always, to me, have impressed me with, everything I've eaten there. But then again, sometimes I go down to Twin Cities Grill, right? And get just a martini.
Right.
And that's spectacular. And so I love that. And I love, of course, a smash burger at Shake Shack, gotta have that. And then recently when I was here, I have to say that my kid was back from college and we had to come to Mall of America to do there was 3 things he needed. And I knew we could find them all here. And so we hit that. Games by James, that's his, weird Catan thing. And then I was like, and we tried the conveyor belt sushi, and I can't remember the name of
Kura
it.
sushi.
Yeah, okay. So we were like, let's go give that a shot. And it was
It's fun.
It was marvelous. And so I kind of always know that what I like is that I can tie it into the experience. So whatever, a bunch of girls and I went to see, we actually saw the Taylor Swift movie at the movie theater here. And then we're like, we need cocktails, stat, and so then we'd pop over to Crave or something like that. So what I love is that I know I can find what I need to hit to round out the full experience when I'm here.
That's great.
I love that.
And I hate to ask you what your favorites are because that's like picking your favorite
I know.
child because you work with so many of
Right.
them. But what would you say maybe has surprised you, the success, or ones that have just been staples that have been, the constant success stories for us here at the mall?
Sure. So for one, we're here 5 days a week, right? Boots on ground, 5, sometimes 6 or more.
I was gonna say.
For some of us. So there's a day for everything. So if it's like a business lunch or something like that, or even a team outing, I think the go-to, it can be Cedar and Stone, it can be Fire Lake, both incredible restaurants. But then that's when Crave also comes into play. And if it's more casual, everyone loves like Piata or Ichido Ramen has become a popular. If you look at those Asian trends that we're talking about,
Yeah.
so good and so much fun and some of our favorites to go to. But it really depends on the day because we're thrown at, in so many different situations. Maybe we're short on time or maybe it is a business lunch. There's something for every occasion, to your point. The experience delivers from that standpoint. But the ones I just mentioned are all of my favorites. And Cantina Laredo is also a good one because chips and guac,
You can't go wrong.
you cannot
A little
go wrong.
margarita on the side.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
So can you give a little sneak peek of what you're working on or categories that you think would be a great complement to what we already have?
There are some categories. Missing categories is what I like to focus on.
Yeah.
And maybe you can help with this from just picking your brain. But and this is true, I think, maybe for Minneapolis and St. Paul in general, but we need a really great deli. Yeah. Think of New York delis, great sandwich, something like that. We don't have that here.
Correct.
And we would love to have something like that here. And when you go to New York and you have that incredible deli experience, you want to bring it back here. I want to bring it back here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one category that's like a missing category for us. But it's also missing, I think, in Minneapolis and St. Paul, too.
We have so many disparate little sandwich shops, and people are sort of take a toe in, and then they don't. I feel like they're afraid to commit to it, and maybe the money's not there in the way that they're thinking about it. We need someone to come in that can figure out that model correctly.
Yeah, and then there's also, because the Asian trend is so incredibly strong right now, and it has been for a long time, but I just feel like it's kind of having a resurgence right now. love to see something more on a larger scale of like the hand-pulled noodles.
And dumplings.
And dumplings, yeah. That whole experience would be incredible. And it ties also into that entertainment because people are watching, and it's really an amazing experience to watch them do the hand-pulled noodles and the dumplings and all of that. Would love to see something like that here as well.
You guys are making me hungry. And I just realized we scheduled this during a lunchtime. So we're talking
know, that was
right
long.
now. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to have lunch today and try all the new things. No, I love the feedback. And I think it's great because we do get inspiration from so many partners and different brands and what's happening here and what's happening around the world. Because we have people from all walks of life that come here and different cultures. And it's important for us to have food offerings for all the different audiences that walk through the doors. So excited about what's to come and encourage everyone to try out all of our restaurants because we have such a great mix with over 50 different offerings here at the mall. So it's great. Stephanie, I mean, you literally live and breathe the food scene every single day, and you have fun stories because you've met some great people along the way. You mentioned the State Fair, which brings up a story, and you hosted Harry Smith from the Today Show here, and specifically brought him to the State Fair, right?
Yep.
That's a food experience in itself. So tell us that story and any other fun stories of celebs that you've worked with.
Harry Smith was really one of those. It was really fantastic because they contacted me. They're like, we hear that you tend to love the State Fair and that you've eaten a lot of things. And I was like, yes, I have. And so they said, will you run us around the fair? And I was like, I'd be honored, And it was great because I thought I get to show him some of my great favorites and like the people who I really love. And we started at the Peach, place at the Produce Exchange. And, my kid was working in the back. And, it just is because it's like, this is it. This is like the family. We all know each other. And working through and walking through the fair with him, he would just be drawn. He's like, what is that? What is that? So I had this whole map set out and then he would veer off to the left and right because he was like, what are fudge puppies? And it was like, they start singing fudge puppies. And he was hooked. And I was like, okay, I guess I didn't think that was going to be the thing, but there you go. And then the best part about it was, so he was so generous with all the people and they were the people coming up to him and he just loved it. The thing is, he said to me, I'm like, we got to go to the corn. And he's like, I've had corn. We don't need to go to corn. I'm like, no, you need to go to the corn. He's like, seriously, it's just corn. I'm like, you need to trust me and you need to try this corn. It is not the same corn that you've had anywhere else. And he was like, okay, fine. He was 3 years in and then was like, oh my God, you were so right. He's like, I'm sorry, I doubted you. I'm like, thank you. Like, honestly, do not deny that this is different corn than anywhere else in the country. It just is. And he was sold. And I thought that was the moment, like, teaching that piece of what makes us special, that it can be the smallest little thing, right? It can be something that people tend to overlook. And that's a thing about us, right? Maybe we're flyover, whatever. The magic is in the moments here. And that is what I think, as long as we can get people to understand that from other places, then I don't really need much of their recognition. I just want them to understand. So that's that was my favorite moment.
Any other celeb run-ins that you've had that are memorable?
So we used to do this thing where, so a million years ago when I was bartending I was bartending at the Buca de Beppo in Eden Prairie, way back, like after I lost my advertising gig. And I was at the bar and, it's on the way to and from Paisley Park, which is out there. So right, way back in, I'm talking like 95 or 96, something like that. And not only did I have, there's no alcohol out at Paisley Park, as you know. And so then I would get them at the late nights. And for some reason I was working Sundays and they would come in and sit at my bar on Sundays. And I would get Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam. And there was one time where I had a woman who I will not name, but who was very, she had her baseball cap on and her big glasses, and she didn't really want to know. And I'm not saying it was Janet Jackson.
I was just going to say, well, you said Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, so we can connect the dots.
I'm not going to say that. And it was just like, she was just at the end of the bar, and they got some calamari to go, and then they left. And it was just like, just those moments, right?
I love that.
We used to get people all the time coming in and out. And so that was kind of fun on that side of things.
One of my favorite openings here at the mall and having the celebrity element was Wahlburgers. Being able to have the brothers here and having that star moment. And it was just fun to watch the dynamic between Donnie and Mark and Paul.
Their
and
personalities.
The two
so
that really were comfortable with the stardom. And then you had Paul that kind of, he was the brainchild of, the behind the scenes of the culinary piece of it. But that was super fun.
So much fun.
So many fans converge on that in different generations. And so that was a really fun star moment.
Donnie is like this big teddy bear.
Yeah.
Just everyone wants to hug him and love him. And Mark has like that, Hollywood A-lister personality. And then Paul is like this quiet, shy. Like, do I really have to do I really have to talk to everyone? So the dynamic together was amazing. Yeah. And I have to say this, though, they were in awe of being here. They were taking video of all the people in the rotunda. Yes. I mean, they were just like, wow. I mean, that was to see them so surprised. Cool. Mm-hmm. Oh, it was amazing.
Well, you've seen when the rotunda's packed, all 4 levels, and when you walk into that space, it is a wow moment. Yeah. So to be able to see celebrities in awe when that happens, it's super rewarding for us because we can bring that fan experience to them. So I want to wrap up today because we're actually getting close on time. Believe it or not, it goes so fast. I mean, beyond your day-to-day. I mean, you do a lot of side gigs of so many different things. And I'm curious of how you get it all in. But as we talk about, when you do something that you love, you find the time, you prioritize, and you make it happen. But from being on radio shows, podcasts, writing blogs, being part of an influencer that is a spokesperson for a lot of national shows and also writing content, how do you do it all? And I also want to talk about your new project too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, honestly, and again, it really works out to the fact that like I've grown up in this industry, a lot of it, in terms of like bartending, during college and then coming back to Minneapolis and just, kind of all of that, we've all kind of grown up together, and it just becomes, if you're in the industry, it kind of never leaves you, and I mean, it is the second biggest employer in the country behind the government. I think that's like the stat I like to give out. But it's sort of you kind of, if you're doing it, and I don't want to say this because I hate it when people say do the thing you love and you'll never work a day in your life. No, you're working.
Still working.
You're working. But it just becomes easier and it just becomes a little bit lighter. And you're also, there's times where like it's organic to where I'm out at breakfast with the girls and, just like my friends, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, this is a trend, and I notice it. And then I sit back and I think about it, and I can pull it into 4 different ways of, content, because multi-platform is sort of the only way forward, right? I mean, I'm a writer, but I'm also a broadcaster, and I, think in different ways. And that's sort of the new media moment where it's like, let's just tell the story as richly as we possibly can. And so when you think about that, I also think about my new project is called Pickle, and it's Pickle by Steph March. It's a Substack, which is another way of also then helping creatively think about storytelling. And for me, I talk a lot about food, and it's always been, there's a personal side to it, but then there's this other personal side that isn't necessarily about food, but giving that side of yourself to other people and helping them recognize it in themselves is also cultivating community. And so I love my food community, and that's a big, huge piece of who I am and why it's so easy to do it. But I also love the women's side of the community that has really saved me in dark days. And I think it's super important to also give to that. And especially as a woman who is proudly 53, I do not hide my age, and I love it. I am having the best time at 53. And I think that's important to sort of shine the light on that and give space and voice to that. So what I'm doing is just it's a Substack, which is a newsletter that comes out twice a week. And so one will come out this afternoon and one will come out usually on Mondays. And it just is, and I'm encouraging other women to submit their own stories. And it's really, call it Pickle because it's about seasoning and time, right? Fermentation.
Oh, I love that.
It's all about what we all go through and then how we change. And I think there's something beautiful about change. I'm not afraid of change. I love it. And I know other people get very scared about it. And I would just like to open stories of change for women. And that's really important to me.
So where do our listeners sign up to receive the Pickle newsletter?
You can just find it on Substack. It's called Pickle by Steph March at Substack, which is, you can there's an app and it's a website. So if you just even Googled Pickle by Steph March, you could probably find it. So yeah.
I love it.
It's
so
good stuff.
Exciting.
Well,
really
and I'll embed this. Once we get this all posted, I'll put it on the old thing.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. Well, Stephanie, Carrie, thank you so much. Such a fun conversation.
So much fun.
We could talk about this for hours.
I know. We should have lunch.
We should. Well, thank you to all of our listeners and viewers. This was another episode of So Much More. Check us out where you watch and listen to your favorite podcasts, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of So Much More. If you want to hear more, be sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever you find your favorites, including Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts. And you can also watch a video cast on YouTube. Go to podcast.mallofamerica.com to leave a review, ask a question, or give us an idea for the show. Until next time, thanks for listening. So Much More is presented by the Bloomington Convention and Visitors Bureau, the official destination marketing organization for the city of Bloomington, Minnesota. Before your next trip to Mall of America, visit bloomingtonmn.org for answers to all your travel questions, deals and packages for hotel stays, and so much more.